Storytime with Stephanie Storey.
I am art historical novelist Stephanie Storey. Welcome to my show, Storytime. Today, we're doing something a little bit different that I hope kicks off a little bit of a trend here, because as many of you know at home, before I was an art historical novelist, I was a television producer for 20 years. And I met this woman while we were both working on a late night talk show, Arsenio Hall's relaunch on CBS, or for CBS syndication. And she was a writer and I was a producer. She is a late night daytime comedy writer. She's currently working on the Late Late Show with James Corden, but she's also worked on Jimmy Kimmel, Bill Nye Saves the World. Come on, that's a good one. Ellen DeGeneres. Anyway, lots of other credits. I wanted to talk to her about writing in Hollywood because it is so different than writing the novels. Welcome to the show, Cece Pleasants.
Hi, thanks. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah, it is. It's been a long time since we have been able to have a conversation. And I don't know that I've ever gotten to talk to you about actual writing before.
I know. I don't think, because when we were working on Arsenio, we were very busy all the time because it was the first season of a TV show, which is always bonkers. So yeah, we never really talked writing. It was just like, we need the thing for the thing, and running around. And yeah.
Okay, as long as you started there, I always try to explain this to my friends and family and other people who are other kinds of writers, write books, which is much quieter.
Right.
Have you figured out a way to express the intensity and bonkers level of working in late night television or writing 5 nights a week of TV?
I don't know. Like, I guess when you tell someone that you're writing an hour every night, like you're writing an hour television show every night, maybe that helps them visualize how crazy that is and how much you're just kind of churning and burning through stuff. And sometimes I call it riding into a garbage can because because you're turning stuff over so quickly, and there is sort of a disposable nature to late night television. Although what's fun now with YouTube and everything is that things do live a little bit longer on the internet and in people's brains and whatever. So that's like changed the super disposable nature of all of it. But it is like it is just kind of churning and burning, and sometimes your brain goes numb, and and you I feel like I constantly wake up in the morning with that feeling of, what if I'm not funny and I've never been funny and I can't think of any jokes today?
Okay, but that's the same issue that those of us who are novelists have every day. We sit down in the front of the computer. What if I can't ever write a story about that again? So I know how I deal with that as an individual human being.
Right.
I forget how I dealt with that in such a collaborative place. And you are walking into what I always felt like was a Shark Tank of a writer's room. How do you face that kind of insecurity when you're walking into that room with all of those other comics? First answer that, and then we'll talk about what that is.
It's terrifying. It's really terrifying. And I'm so lucky. Like the last few shows that I've worked on, the last thing I did Bill Nye, and then I am on James Corden now, and both of those are like just insanely nice rooms, and there really isn't a ton of ego and like competitiveness. It's so nice and like more like just lovely and collaborative and kind. So that's the greatest. And then I have been in rooms that are very competitive and very aggro and scary. And when I started, which was like 13, 14 years ago, I was always the only woman in the room. So there was that added element of like, it's me and a bunch of dudes, and most of them were way more experienced than I was. And there was sort of this like feeling that I had to walk in and be the dirtiest and the funniest and the, just like really prove everything, like prove that I can hang and I'm cool, and also that I am good at my job and all of that stuff.
How old were you when you were the first woman in one of these writers' rooms?
I was like 20. Well, let's see. I got my first first writing job when I was 25. So yeah, and I was a baby. I was a little dumb baby, and I was like, and I was terrified, and and there's always, like, luckily in my whole career, there's always been somebody that's kind of been willing to be like mama chicken or daddy chicken or something, and like, here, be under my wing. And as much as I've definitely dealt with like harassment and all sorts of fun things that we won't get into today, but like, because I'm a woman and in the world, I won't even say in comedy or whatever, yeah. Like, I also have been lucky enough to have like mentors and people in my life that were willing to sort of help me navigate through all that, because I was just a white trash kid from Virginia, and I and I went to school for musical theater, and I had no idea that I was gonna end up being a comedy writer, but I started doing stand-up and I loved it and it was fun, and I like just kind of walked into that path, and I the world wasn't as big then, so I didn't know that comedy writer was a job. And and when I found out, I was like, oh my gosh, that's great. But I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know like what a writer's room was like, or what that would mean, or like, I didn't know that it would be all men. I didn't, it didn't occur to me like until you walk in the room and you're like, oh, this is all men. Like, interesting. Yeah. So what was the original question? I feel like I haven't answered anything.
I have no idea.
Okay.
You were 25 when you walked into the room. Was it a benefit to be that young?
For sure.
In a way, because you were too naive to know better.
I think in a way it's great to not know how much you don't know. And sometimes I wish I could have some of that back, because I feel like there are a lot of people that become incredibly successful because they don't know what they don't know, and in and in television especially, nobody knows what they're doing, like literally, like, people who are insanely successful have no idea. They're just, because like no one knows what people are going to connect to in terms of television, or who's going to be a star, or any of that. Like, it's all kind of a metric that no one can figure out ahead of time. So really, the people that are incredibly successful are the ones who are like, I know that this is going to be good, and then everybody follows that person. And yeah. So yeah, I mean, so if you are super confident, and I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't many talented people in the world of television and film and whatever, but like, if you're incredibly confident and don't like let all of that stuff into your brain about like, well, I don't know anything, and I don't know what people will like, and I don't, like, I think it is a smoother path. So being very young in a writer's room, I think is a great asset. Like, not knowing what you don't know is great.
Yeah, it was easier. I got my first TV job when I was 25 too, and it was so much easier back then, because it was like, this I guess this is just what work is. Okay, as crazy as it is. But paint a picture for people who have never been in a late night comedy show. What does the writer's room look like? And what is just that sort of that basic process you go through in order to churn out a script every day?
Well, late night, I mean, I've been in several different late night rooms, and there's kind of there's not any one formula. Like for Bill Nye, we just sat in the room all day kind of with Bill and talked about big scientific principles that I would constantly say, like, explain it to me like I grew up in a trailer, because I did. And we would like figure out how to craft things so that everybody could understand and it would be funny and entertaining. And that was like so great and fun. And then for late night, it's, there's always some version of monologue jokes. So obviously the first thing on any late night show is the monologues, and it's and you want daily topical jokes from your late night show. So usually monologue jokes start in the morning. So that's like kind of the first thing you do. So with Corden, we go in and hit the ground running at 9 a.m. At Arsenio, we were there at 7:30. At Kimmel, you write from home starting at 7:30, and then you go in at like 10 or whatever. Everybody writes jokes in the morning because you just need like, sometimes it takes like 10 jokes to get to one good joke. Or not even one good joke, but like just one joke that hits with the host and the executive producers. And because there's so many people, I mean, as a novel writer, it's just you and your computer, but for us it's like, as you know, Stephanie, there are like a billion people that have to sign off on, one Donald Trump joke. So
there are a billion people. I mean, it is extraordinary when you're on one of these shows how many people have to sign off on every joke, every sketch, everything.
Yeah.
Do you like that collaborative nature of it? You have to, if this is what you've been doing. In some manner, you have to like it.
It pays the bills. No, I mean, yeah, I do. I love it. And I do think that comedy is better with a committee. I know most things aren't better by committee, but I do think comedy tends to be better by committee. Now, it can definitely get watered down and be terrible, but also like in a super fast paced environment, when you have like 10 people or 12 people or 15 people writing jokes, so you come out with like 150 jokes or something, then the best joke wins and the best joke gets on the air. Hopefully, it's not always the case, but like, or like, we can't say the best joke because standards and practices won't let us, but we'll do the second best joke or whatever.
People at home, standards and practices are the lawyer people who tell you, no, you're not allowed to say that on the TV. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. You can say the bad word for poop after 10 p.m., but you can't say it before 9:30. Yeah, like.
So after you have this big whole pile of jokes for a monologue, and you've got these whole sketches that have been written, and you've got all this stuff. Fast forward a little bit through the day, because every day feels like a marathon to me on 5 nights of television. Fast forward a little bit to the end of the day as you're getting closer to tape time. And tell me what's happening in your world as you're sort of ticking down toward the host is practicing the monologue and you're really sort of making those last minute decisions.
Well, so like if you're working, so let's say everybody finishes writing monologue jokes at 11 or whatever, or 10, and the monologue kind of starts coming together. So that's there may be a team that's just working on monologue, and so they're sort of constructing the monologue and taking it to the host, and the host says, I like this and I don't like that, and like moving it around. And then while that's happening, there's also a sketch team that's working on. There's usually like, in any late night show, there's usually some sort of like, after the monologue, there's a little sketch or a little joke bucket thing, which is basically like a, top 10 list is the classic joke bucket piece. And then maybe there's like a bigger sketch that's also in production at the same time. So like on James Corden, there's Carpool Karaoke, there's Crosswalk the Musical, there's these huge production pieces. So maybe there's going to be a Crosswalk the Musical on Wednesday and it's Monday and we need things for Will Smith to say, and we need some, like different jokes or different ideas, or we have, there's always like people in late night, there's always, you have like the list of guests that are coming in the next couple of weeks. And so you're usually pitching on whatever's on the show that day and then working on whatever's on the show tomorrow and the next day and next week. And then we like do a rehearsal, and then after rehearsal, if anything's not working, swap it out. Sometimes there's a big rush. Sometimes some sort of news happens that we feel like we really need to cover. And so then we have to like rejigger everything so that we can do like a piece on this, or at least a couple monologue jokes or whatever. And so, and then we tape, for Corden, we tape at 5:00, and then you go into the edit and make sure it's all pretty. And then it goes into the world and you never see it again.
Right. And when it goes in the world and you never see it again, I always have a hard time expressing this to people, so maybe you can help. I then could not remember a single thing that had happened on that show because I was already now on to tomorrow. Like, I felt like I had amnesia working 5 nights a week of television for anything that had come my way. Do you feel that way in the writer's room? Do you still remember jokes that you wrote, or are they gone?
No, they go away so quickly. I know a lot of comedy writers actually, and comedians who will like remember a joke that they wrote 10 years ago or something, and I like it when it leaves my brain, it's just got, like when I put it on the page, then it's bye-bye. I've said goodbye to my child, and it's gone out into the world, and it's succeeded or failed or whatever. Yeah, I guess I just don't have the bandwidth to remember anything. I do, like I said, I know it's different if you do stand-up. Like I definitely will remember stand-up jokes from years ago, like because you do those over and over again, and it's your voice and it's coming out of your mouth. But like writing jokes for late night, I don't remember a one. I couldn't, if you asked me to tell you a joke that I've written, I would just draw a blank and
I don't know. Right.
Fall out of frame.
Okay, but that brings up a question that I think I emailed you earlier, which is when I was working in television, you said when you were writing stand-up comedy, it was in your own voice. And when you're writing in late night, it's the host voice. Mm-hmm. I didn't personally feel a whole lot of ownership over what went up on the TV screen, even if I had produced it, even if you wrote the joke, because somehow it mentally belonged to the host. Do you feel that way, or do the writers feel a little bit more ownership of it than like the producers do?
I think it very much depends on, I would say day to day, not really, but and you did email me this question. I should have thought about it a little bit more, but it's such a good question, because it is like day to day I feel a lot of pride in the show that we do. Like I feel a certain amount of like, I think some of my voice like works its way into the show, especially in the monologue and stuff. But like, I don't remember any of the jokes that I write. There are some sketches that I've written that I'm like, oh, I love that sketch, and I'm glad that we got to do it and that it ended up on the show. So I do feel a certain amount of ownership, but it's also like, yeah, because it's so fast paced. Sometimes I refer to it as clocking in and out of the joke factory, because you're just like, you go in and you make the jokes, and then you go home and and then you sit down and have a beer and tell your spouse about your day. Like,
I always felt like, well, if this one's terrible, there's always another one tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there is like a certain amount of freedom in that, which is, I mean, it's like, as much as I like someday would love to write a novel, and I think what you do is so amazing and cool, like, and I would love to do that because it's so different than what I do. Yeah. But there's such a like a nice freedom in the fact that if you really screw it up today, hopefully you get another chance tomorrow. Hopefully you don't get fired. But like, theoretically, like we do this one today, and maybe like the lights fall down and everything goes wrong, and then we come back and do it again tomorrow, and it's hopefully better. So.
Okay, you referenced a couple of times that you were a kid in a trailer from Virginia. What did you imagine you would be doing as a kid? You didn't even know there were comedy writers. And how did you make the leap from stand-up comic to writing for television? Two different questions, but
Yeah. Well, so my mom, I was super shy and scared to talk to people. Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. I think that's like the story of a lot of folks who end up in some sort of in a creative, like an outwardly creative industry, like because you're like, so you keep it all inside, and then you're like, I need to say something. Yeah, so my mom put me in drama school when I was a little kid, and so that I would learn to speak above a whisper. And then I ended up going to college for musical theater. I went to AMDA. And my parents drove me in their yellow pickup truck with like my trunk lashed to the back. It was so Beverly Hillbillies. It was so hilarious. They drove me from Mechanicsville, Virginia to New York City and dropped me off in New York City. and like just really had no idea what they were doing. It was insane. And then I'd always wanted to do stand-up, and so as I was doing musical theater, I got a job right out of school doing musical theater, and then I was like, oh crap, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life, because my first job was in a repertory company, and I was like in a cast house with people in Indiana, and they're like, I was a virgin and there were no boys around who were interested in girls, and I like I was like, oh no, I'm going to do musical theater for the rest of my life. I'm never going to lose my virginity. I like
A very practical reason to go to Hollywood.
yeah. So maybe part of it was just that I needed
Okay, biggest thing that shocked you about working in Hollywood, about being a writer there? I mean, not that you didn't necessarily come into it with a lot of expectations, but
I didn't. I think, I guess I had always worked in jobs. Like prior to that, I always had a job, and I stayed at the job for a while. Like even, when I was temping or like doing secretarial stuff or whatever, like I was a temp at investment banks, and I would just get passed around to the same banks. And I was always like, there was some sense of stability. And I didn't ever realize how completely unstable TV, which of course you should realize that. It shouldn't be a shock at all, but it is truly, like, even when I got to a point in my career where I had like worked on some pretty big shows and had some awards and whatever, like, there's still like people have years where there's nothing going on, or you just don't work, or you're not a right fit for what's happening and whatever. And as the TV landscape changes, like that causes growing pains for shows and stuff like that. So it is truly just the Wild West. And I guess I just never thought that was going to be the case. I also, one of my second or third big job was Wipeout, which went for 7 seasons, which is completely unheard of. So
you were on it for all 7 seasons, Cece?
I was on it for I think I was on it for 6 or like 6.5 of the 7 seasons.
That's
I left it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
Gets that. For those of you at home, that doesn't happen. It's not normal.
It's not a thing. Yeah, it's not a thing. So yeah, so it's just like the freelance life, I guess, like you just don't quite realize what you're signing up for with that. Do you ever miss it? You still do it, don't you? Or are you still like, yeah.
I did Alec Baldwin's show on ABC last year, that, and cool. I just wrapped on a documentary for CNN. I think I miss the pace, because it is so slow and solitary when you're writing a novel. It's great. I love it. But I think I miss part of the pace and part of the back and forth and part of the collaboration, because you get something out of it. You don't get living inside your own head.
Yes, that is true. And I feel like that's like my difficulty in writing longer form things, is that I am so used to the fast pace, and I like it, and I feel like I thrive in it a little bit. And then like just being able to run into somebody else's office or like run over to the conference table and be like, is this funny? Is this good? Just get like instant validation, or like, no, that's crap, do something else, or whatever. Like, just that is appealing to me, and it's hard for me to not have that, which this work from home thing has been, weird.
That's what I was going to ask about. I was going to say, I've already kept you, but now I have to ask about the change in pace of working from home and how the pandemic has been, because you guys are still on the air, but you're doing it from your house. How different is it? How has it changed your process and the way you're thinking about all this stuff?
We're Zooming. We're just Zooming all over the place.
It's all day long.
Yeah, I'm on Zooms, like, I would say 6 hours a day, probably. I'm on Zoom. Maybe not 6, like not consecutively, but like we have a production meeting, and then we have like a sort of a creative meeting, and then we have another, so it's it is we're still collaborating a ton, but it is a little different. Again, it's like that you don't get that face to face, like, and the writers' rooms, the creative meetings are a little harder because, you know, it's like people jumping in on each other, but then you can't have that sort of natural flow of conversation like you have in real life on Zoom.
No, it is funny. I've been talking to people, and I feel like there are some industries that are going to move more towards this, but people have asked me whether production would. I'm like, you can't. Production cannot forever move to digital. You have to. What is it about that? Last question, and then we'll really let you go eat dinner or whatever you have to do during the pandemic. What is it about that collaborative nature of those? You have to be in the room together. You're already talking a little bit about it, but do you know sort of what the real the magic is of it?
I don't know. I think it's like, honestly, I think there's a certain amount of screwing around that happens in a writer's room, like in a environment, or like not even writer, like with producers and whatever, like that where everybody on a production is collectively screwing around in a way. Like, so you know, out of just like any other work environment, out of a 10-hour day, maybe you work 8 hours or 6 hours, and the rest of that time is screwing around. And I think that screwing around with your coworkers and like understanding each other in like a fun goofball way, especially for comedy and creative, anything creative, I'm sure, like also for drama and all of that stuff, like just having this like an easy collective conscience of like, you know, us like making jokes and being silly, or talking about what's happening in the world, or talking about what happened last night with our husband or wife or whatever, like or dog, or you know, like maybe you're married to your dog, and that's cool. Gives you like it informs what you do, and it makes stuff like richer and better and more fun, I think.
Oh, I love that. It's true. And now you're making me miss it. Now I'm like, oh wait, this is over. I gotta go find a show.
No, it's terrible.
No, and then I'm gonna go, never mind. I'm just gonna finish my third book. Thanks very much, guys. It's been great.
Yeah.
Story time with Stephanie Storey. Story time virtually. We've got time and plenty of stories, talking stories in a novel way. Story time with Stephanie Storey.